Good morning, everybody. Another episode of the Keep Going podcast, athletes shining a light on mental health. Joined by the whole entire group. David Mitchell, handsome as ever out there in Colorado. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. I'm excited to be back today. Missed a couple weeks, but yeah, this we got a special guest today, and it's gonna be a good one.
I completely agree. And Dave, we missed you. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I missed you. The people missed you. Viewers were down over the last couple weeks. I'm gonna put that on you because you're just so damn handsome. Jackie, what's up with you?
Not much. Caught up on some well-deserved sleep last night. A lot of sports on this weekend, like we touched on in the prelude. So hung out yesterday, watched a ton of sports, and ready to do more today and kind of get ready for the week.
Well, Jackie, it's good to see you. Good to have you on as well. And then Nicole, it's amazing once again. This is back-to-back weeks when we have an organic guest. How did you find out about the Keep Going podcast? How did we get connected? I got to know.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think that you get connected with people around when you're kind of doing the same things. So to me, I think it was friends in common. It was just a fellow, it was friends in common. The name was something that really caught my eye. I was like, I need to know more about this. And then I got into the profile and I saw you guys and I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly up on my team. This is exactly what I'm on about. So let's just follow and see what you guys are up to. And you guys are amazing. So I'm so super happy to be here.
Oh my goodness, what a blessing. No, it's always good to, have someone on that we've all never met before. Like it's awesome. Like, cause your background is unbelievable. Obviously, Division I athlete. You're big in the mental performance and mental health space. We follow your social media. It's fantastic. And not only that, but you're telling me and the rest of the gang in the prelude, you're a big baseball fan as well. So tell me about the Venezuela game last night and what it meant for you and what you represent.
Pat, I'm gonna tell you, it was the most amazing thing I've ever watched in a little while. I'm a big baseball fan. We're a big baseball country, and I want to give a big, big shout out to our baseball team because they just did the amazing. They beat Japan 8-5. And it was just so fun to watch. I think one of the greatest things about sports is to be able to witness those things, right? But Japan was the last champion. It was the team to beat, and to have my team to beat the team to beat, I think it's just amazing. And it was just so unbelievable. I was telling the guys I have such a great video of my friends celebrating when the time was done. It's just amazing, amazing. I think that's one of the things that I love about sports, right? It's the feeling that you get. It's the stories that you get to tell. So it was just amazing.
No, immaculate. And we talked about USA playing tonight. We're hoping for that same result. We're hoping for a rematch there. Yeah, obviously we're baseball guys, me and Dave. Jackie's more on the basketball side, but very in tune with Boston, the Red Sox, and all that goes into that. So, no, everyone's coming together as a country this evening at 7 as well. But enough about that, Nicole. I got to ask you, when you come on the Keep Going podcast, we want to know about you. How did you get started playing sports and what has that meant to you in your life so far?
Yeah. So, well, you guys know my name is Nicole, but for some reason, my friends started to call me Nix. So if you see that around in my socials, that's why.
I do. I was going to ask. Yes, of
Right.
course.
I can't tell you when it happened or how it happened. It was just something, and I was like, oh my gosh, I like this. I like this Nix nickname. So that's me. I'm 23. I played tennis since I was 4 years old, and I did ballet as well. And it was very, very early in my days where my parents realized that wasn't my thing. They could see me dancing. They were like, that's not her. So we started to find some other things. My dad used to play tennis, so he was like, hey, why don't we make her play some tennis, see if she likes it. And it was a little bit of that. It was from there, from 4 years till my 17, 18 years. I played here. I played in Venezuela. I played around some other different tournaments. And as soon as I graduated, or a little bit before, I was in this question to myself. I was like, hey, do I want to try to go pro? Do I want to go to college? Trying to go pro. I don't know. I don't know much about team sports, but for individual sports, it's a little bit hard to do.
Mhm.
So yeah. So I was like, college is going to be the best option. And that's when I got contacted by Boise State. At the moment, there was a coach there that was also Venezuelan, so that helped a lot. And I got contacted by them. It was funny because I kept telling my mom, I have to keep my mind open because Boise State was the first university to reach out to me. And, I was starting the process. So it was like, I need to keep my mind open. I need I need to see other options, and just to keep myself like going. And then I ended up choosing the very first college that ever reached out to me. They were amazing. I really liked their energy. I was a COVID kid, so I couldn't visit college. So it's a little bit of that leap of faith that sometimes you take. So that was me. And then I went to college, studied psychology for 4 years, had an amazing 4 years of tennis, and then I was like, okay, what's next? What's gonna happen now? What's the future holding? And for me, I knew that some way, somehow I wanted to be connected with tennis and with sports. So that's just what I love to do best. And I was giving tennis coach lessons, and I was just very on how important it was just to the mental side of things, to see things, to talk about them. And I remember I had a class where one of my athletes came to me and said, do you know that you talk too much? And I was like, I know. Yeah, yeah, I can tell. But he didn't say anything where he was like, you talk too much. You should do something about that because you talk too much. So, I was like, yeah, if I wanna make sure I actually, get this kind of message around, I need to find my own space to do so. And I don't think the tennis court is a place to do so, because in the tennis court, you want to play tennis. You can say some things, but you want to mainly play tennis. So I was like, okay, what do I do with this that I know now about myself? And that's when Mice and My Knicks came in. It was just that, that challenge for me to, first of all, understand my experience from a different standpoint, and to second, okay, how can I use this to better my community and to help out? Because at the end of the day, and I always tell my athletes and the people I talk to, tennis opened so many doors for me. And I think, the only thing I can give back is to make sure I do my best to help people out, to do that for them. So that's a little bit of how everything started. That's a little bit about me. I have a little brother that I love so much. He's 5 years old. He's about to be 6. He was super pumped about baseball too. I have parents that I love so much, and I just have a really good, circle in my life that is just amazing. So that's a little bit about me. And I love baseball. I love sports. And I love when we win at baseball.
Nix, I will tell you this. This is hitting home for me completely. I've told this story on the podcast before, but I'll tell it real quick now. When I was a senior in high school, I actually won, how they do like the newspaper, like journalism, like voting, like senior awards, right? I actually won Talks Most Says Least in my senior awards. And I always laugh now because now they pay me to go around the country to speak.
Right.
So, at the end of the day, you could take that one of two ways. I could have been like, dang, I'm just going to stop talking. Right. But I chose to get better at listening. I chose to get better at what I say, right? And when I use my energy. So I love when you speak. I hope you keep speaking. I have to ask you selfishly, being a Division I tennis player, when did you know you were going to play in college at a high level? Like, when did you have that, I'm going to do this moment?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think that to me, so I'm from Venezuela. And when I was 14, 15, I got the opportunity to go live in Florida in a tennis academy, and this kind of environment where you practice twice a day. And, it's more of a homeschooling system. And, I was probably a year and a half in when I realized it was just too much. It was just too much. And I talked to my parents, and I was like, hey, I think I need a break, because I need to think things. And then, I came back, I was around 17 almost, and came back, and I was to myself, I was like, I'm tired. I'm a little tired, but not about the sport. I was just tired about that dynamic. So, for me, that meant like, hey, maybe you don't want to do this as a professional, because this is what it takes, because that's the life that you were living. But what else is out there? Because you love the sport so much. And that's when we started looking at college, and that's, when we started looking at those things. And thankfully I had the opportunities to play some good tournaments around that allowed me to have a good ranking and just a good exposure to recruiters, pretty much, that kind of allowed me to have that those opportunities to talk to them. So and when when you are from a country where I feel like, all the opportunities that you have, you need to take. Sometimes it's hard to decide, okay, what's best for me? Because sometimes you just want to take whatever is out there, right? So it was a very eye-opening experience of, having the opportunity to sit down and look at the chances and be like, okay, because I talked to D1s, I talked to D2s as well. And, I think when you're thinking about your future, and yes, it's so cool to say you play D1, but when you think about your future and you think about your next 4 years, I think what's most important is to go to a place that's going to help you grow, in all areas. So
Amen. Yeah.
to me, it was a little bit of that. I had amazing parents follow me around and follow all of my decisions. I'm not going to lie. I'm in Venezuela, so that's South America. And, I had a few opportunities to go more to the east of the country of the US, and I decided to go to the west, which is farther away. And I had some conversations about like, well, like, is it like you don't want to see your family anymore? I was like, no, it's not about that. You guys, it's not. They were joking. It's like, I don't, it's not about that. But it's just about finding the right place. And to me, that was definitely voice to state, the right place, right people. So that's a little bit how it happened.
I'm with you for sure. Jackie, I know this is probably hitting home too with you. You're a big, obviously, tennis fan. You wake up super early watching tennis. I know you got some great players there. Go ahead.
Yeah, a little upset that Alcaraz lost yesterday, but that's okay. Tennis is a funny sport though, because yesterday I'm switching back and forth between college basketball and conference championships and the tennis match. And I watched a soccer game and then I was watching tennis. And the commonality between the team sports is that if you're down in basketball and the other team goes on a 10-0 run, you have your team to lift you up. And tennis is a very interesting sport, kind of similar to golf, where a lot of times you only have yourself to get out of that rut. So how is that something? Because that's not something that Dave, Pat, and I can really relate to because we played team sports. So as a tennis player, how do you get yourself or dig yourself out of those holes, like when you're down and the other person's just rallying?
Yeah, I think we were talking about it before. There's all sports this weekend, so that's so fun to watch. So, but yeah, I mean, to me, it's hard. Like I'm not, and I always tell my athletes, hey, it's hard. We picked up, and I think all sports have their part where they're hard. But for us, is that for us is it's feeling that it's all up to you. And I think a big shout out to the ATP and to the WTA that right now are allowing that more of that communication between coach and player and coaches and player, because you need that. And I think tennis was a sport that for many years had a vision of like, this is all about you and you have to do all about by yourself. And then I think along the years, it's been more of like, okay, this is more of a team effort. Look at that. You are the one playing, but look at how many people are down there sitting on your bench cheering for you. So I like that for that. And for me, it was when I was junior, it was tough. It was tough. And I remember that our favorite tournaments were the team tournaments that you got to play when you got to play, for your country, that you had kind of a team with you, because it was that environment. It was just very hard, and I always say that as something to be aware of. But I always tell my athletes that's going to be a strength of yours. You as a tennis athlete, that's going to be a strength of yours, that you were able to change that, right? And I think that knowing. And I think this is funny to me, because then I had to learn the other thing around, right? But knowing that everything it's kind of, it relies on you, sometimes could feel like a lot of pressure, and also sometimes can feel like a lot of relief, because sometimes you're like, okay, if I win, it's going to be because of what I do or what I don't do, and if I lose, that's also going to be about me. But it's hard. Like, I'm not going to lie to you, especially when you're growing up, it's hard to go home. It's hard to play a tournament where only one people wins. It's like one person wins. It's like 200 people playing, and there's only one person to get to the trophy and gets to the victory. So how do you handle that? It's a sport of losers, how my coach used to say, and I think he's pretty right. It's a sport where you're going to lose a lot, but it's a sport where you are going to find a lot of resilience in you. Like, you are actually going to look down on you and be like, okay, what am I about? Like, what's going to be this thing that's going to keep me going? And for me, I just found what was my purpose about playing tennis. Like what was that one thing that regardless of the result of things, I was going to hold on to. And I play because it's fun. I play because I love the sport. I play because I love to learn and grow. I play because of my family and everything they did to get me this far. It's all those things that start filling your head. I play for that little kid that loved to play when she was 4 and she was only laughing when playing. So, and when you think about it, you're never going to be able to fully control results. What you're going to be able is to control what you can do about them. And for me, it was a little bit of that. And I really don't believe, and this goes in, I think, all sports, and you guys tell me, I don't think we don't talk about it enough. And that's why I love this, right? That's why I love this space, because you get a space to talk about it, and us to have that perspective of host athletes to actually talk about it and to give a little bit of light into those moments, because I think they're important. But yeah, that's a little bit of it. Then I have to shift to college into a team sport, which was a really fun shift, if you ask me. So it was fun. Then I had my teammates to cheer for me, and then I had, you were still playing by yourself on the court, but it was a little different because you have your teammates on the side. They're also playing for your sport. They're also playing for your college. There's going to be someone that's already done, and they're shouting their soul out of their body so you can get some energy out of them. So, it's fun. It's fun. And I really, in my athletes, I always tell them, you like tennis. I love that. Go play something else. Go play something else. Get that energy going for you. I think that's amazing. So yeah, I think, I was lucky enough to experience team sports at college. But yeah, it's tough. It's an individual sport, so always going to be a little tougher on that sense. But yeah.
I don't know why I prepared questions. I'm just going to let you just roll because I just, every time I talk, I feel like I'm interfering good information. I have to ask you our main question, preface of the podcast. Have you always been like this? Or like, was there a major low at some point? Tell me your keep going moment and why it's your keep going moment.
Yeah, I mean, the answer, like the full answer is no. I don't think, I think there's many people that are born with some wisdom that you're like, oh my gosh, they're so cool. But for us, and I think as athletes, we just get a lot of downs. We just go through a lot of downs and a lot of, things that when you looking back, you're like, oh my gosh, like I went through that and I did it. That's cool. So, that's a little bit of what it is to me. I can think about a couple moments. I can think about that moment I was on about when I realized maybe tennis wasn't my thing to go pro, because that was always my thing. And that was a down, that was, for me, that was okay. What now? Because I still want to play the sport somehow, but I just don't think this is going to work out for me mentally, physically. So what is it going to be? And it was a lot of dig in. It was a lot of, I think that when that happens to you as an athlete, especially as an athlete where your identity is so, so heavy on who you are as an athlete, right? It's like your world is like erased. It's like, okay, so, what's going to happen, right? That was one for me. It was, it was to learn that tennis was going to be a big thing in my life, but maybe it wasn't going to be the main thing, which is cool, right? And the second one was after college. It's the same thing, right? I think that, I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I played tennis and when I was playing in college, all my goals were around those 4 years. You asked me about goals and I was like, I want to win this, or I wanted my team to win this, and I want to get ranked and all these crazy things that you think of. And then it's like, it's over. Tennis, for me, tennis ended on a Tuesday, on a normal Tuesday. We lost on the championship. So it's like, it's over. And you're like, okay, what's next? Because I'm graduating in a couple of weeks. So what am I going to do? So it was a little bit of that, when you take the tennis side of someone, at least for me, that always thought about herself, about just a tennis player, it's hard because you take 90% of who you think you are, right? So it was a lot of sitting down. It was a lot of asking myself, who you are, who do you think you want to be? How can I, give back, which was one of my main things. How can I give back? How can I make sure whatever I'm doing is giving back to this, and how my experience can be helpful for people? It also took being on a job that, I thought I was going to like, but I didn't, because I'm on the psych side. So, I also took that part of things, of realizing that maybe I'm not built for office hours. Maybe I'm not built for a 9 to 5. So what is going that mean for me? So yeah, it was a lot of digging. It was a lot of looking at yourself in the mirror and actually, getting to know yourself, which when you're 21, 22, again, you spend your whole life thinking about yourself as a tennis player. Take that out. You're like, okay, what am I left with? And then you realize all the amazing things that you're left with. But at the beginning, it's hard. So that was a couple moments in my life that I was like, okay, I need to dig in and actually need to, to rethink and adjust, right? That's what we do. Athletes adjust. So that was me. That was my story a little bit.
Oh, I love that. And I know the mailbag's hot. D Mitch, all you, baby.
Man, there's so much wisdom in what you've already talked about on this episode. Going back to that transition between ending your sport that you've played for, people play it for 20, 30, 15 years, and then starting something new. How does someone that may be struggling with that transition start? Where do they start? Do they start with their purpose? Ask them questions? What advice would you give that person that may be feeling a little uncertain after they just finished their 20-year career in a sport?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great because at least for me, and again, I'm coming from my experience. I had the same issue. I wanted to do so many things. Like when I kept asking myself, "Hey, what do I want? What do I want to do?" I could name a list of things, but yet not something specific. So what helped for me was actually to think, okay, what do I don't want to do? Like what do I know that I do not want to do? And that was a 9 to 5. That was not, being on a job where it wasn't related to sports. I really like working with young athletes and young people in general. So I knew some way, somehow, what I didn't want to do was to not work with young athletes. So, you know, I think sometimes, there's many paths as to how we can get to define what we want to do. And for me, it was by defining what I didn't want to do at first. So I had an idea. I was like, okay, I know that, and I remember, I think I was coming back. Maybe I came back to visit, and then I was coming back to the US to work. And I remember I was on a plane. I was listening to a podcast on about that. That's how lucky we are of podcasts these days. I was listening about a podcast of two artists from like here from home, and she was on about the same. He was asking her like, hey, how do you know you want to be a singer? She said, well, I didn't know. I didn't want to be someone working on an office, or I didn't want to be someone doing this or someone doing that. And that idea I've never heard of, right? Because you're always told to, okay, define who you want to be. Okay, but I think by defining who you don't want to be, you can also define a little bit of who you want to be, right? So, that perspective helped me so much. Like, helped me so much because I really had set the things that I didn't want to do, whereas the things that I wanted to do were so big and so different that it was just not getting me anywhere specific. And this way around actually helped me in my experience. So, if you're someone, again, that is struggling to find out who you want to be, maybe you want to start finding out who you don't want to be. That helped. That helped me. I know it did. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. Just if you don't know where to start there. My second question is going back to that kind of tennis being somewhat of a individual sport, and there's a lot of pressure that people do put on those sports, as I have done in baseball, just being a batter, just going up there yourself. How do you separate who a person is from how they perform?
Yeah. That might be one of the, and I can talk about as tennis players, as an athlete, that might be one of the hardest things that you are going to be faced with, right? You're going to be faced with the fact that you're going to have a bad performance, but you're still a good person. So you have to take care of yourself, and you were going to be faced by so many things. And when I first started this, I'll be honest with you, when I first started this, more like I did want to help people with their performance on tennis court and athletes in general, but I wanted to help people understand that they were more than that. Like how can you make someone understand that they're more than that? And it's funny because this is the first question I always ask anyone that I work with or anyone that I can talk to. And say that the sport that you play is off the table. Say it was never invented. Never happened. Who you are. If I ask you who you are, what you like, and you will be surprised, like actually surprised that athletes, and it doesn't matter where you're 12 or you're 24, they don't have an answer to that. It's like I don't know. Like I don't know. And I always tell them it's okay. You take your time, you think about it, I'm not rushing you. And it can go 10 to 20 minutes past and you're set with that same answer. I don't know. And when you look at that, when you look that right into the eyes, you see that it's a compound result, I feel like, of the way that we've been treating athletes. I think that, and I'm not saying we're treating athletes badly because I had an amazing experience, but I do feel like when we talk about sports, we're always so focused on results. We're always so focused on, so many things that are at the end of the day not in your control 100%. So, to me, that's one of the areas that, more need work and more need people to understand what actually takes, and it's hard. To me, I think it took an injury. I'm not gonna lie. I think, out of all of the things, I think it took an injury for me and to be completely out of the sport to realize, you are more than that. You can't play. You can't even play, Nick. So what are you gonna do? You can't even play. It's not like you can base yourself on your performance right now because you can't perform. So it takes a little bit of that. And my thing is it's for athletes to not have to take that in order for them to realize, right? I feel like and I don't know about you guys, but we learned the hard way, right? The hard way of maybe going on a bad streak of losing or not performing, and then needing to actually understand that you were more than your performance. Some took injuries, some took having to even quit a sport that they loved because they were just so full of this performance and result space. So I think that the good message that we as sports athletes can leave is just to realize that there's two things. I always like to think about it. I don't know if you guys watch Inside Out.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Love that movie. And I always like to tell my athletes, where when I think it's in the second one or the first one, where you can be, you get a sneak peek of what her islands look like. And it's like so many of them, and you can see someone's like, I think it's in the second one that there's a couple that are breaking apart, and there are a couple that are still alive, and there are a couple that somewhere somehow. That's exactly how we work, right? And tennis is an island. It's a part of who we are, but then we have so many of them, right? You have your family one, you have your hobbies one, you have your professional personal life one. I'm a big serious girl, and I love documentaries. So I'm pretty sure in my head there's an island that it's definitely based on that. So again, it's so many things that make you. And for athletes, that's one of the biggest things. That's one of the biggest things, to realize that you're more than that. When you start realizing that, you start taking less of an impact of a bad performance, and you start to realize that you're more than that, and therefore you start to perform better.
Yeah, Nix, this has been this is one of those episodes where I'm gonna look back next week and be like, I need to run this back and take notes on it and share it with my athletes. I love how educated you are at 23. I love that you shared everything you've been through. And I love that you took time out of a Sunday morning with everything going on to come on with us. I will cap us for today. I know there's a lot of stuff on people's plates. Please, if you're listening right now, share this with somebody. Please, this is amazing information, and I'll cap us off for today. But Nix, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time, and above all else, keep going, okay?
Of course. Thank you guys for the opportunity. Anytime. I'll be sitting here anytime that you guys want to talk again.
Oh, you are super sweet, and we'll be following your content, and with everything you're doing, please collab with us. We'd love to help you anyway, okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely will. Thank you guys.
All right, y'all. Keep going. Appreciate you guys, and go USA. Have a great Sunday, everybody.